too, where we didn't know actually if you want to work in commercials and if you want to work in movies, there's kind of like separate ways you had to go into it. But like, and also now I'm like on my first TV show, so it's kind of fun.
And you also said that you worked on a few TV shows and like a movie. So I was wondering, what's one of the most interesting projects that you've worked on?
Access to knowledge, opportunity for exploration.
Join us in exploring careers, passions, and more. Hi, I'm Sunny.
I'm Sahana.
And I'm Nivi. And we are By Youth, for Youth.
Hi guys, today we have with us Miss Joanne Kang. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello.
So I was wondering if you could start off with just explaining what your job is and what that looks like.
Ooh, what my job is. So I am a Previs artist at the moment. That's a very specific genre in the job though. Maybe we can talk about that later, but I guess in general I'm just a CG generalist. Yeah, that's a nice one to go with. Or I know like some people want to call it like 3D animator, but I can't say that because I'm not actually an animator. But
that's
yeah,
actually interesting that you brought that up, because I know you have a website and I was kind of going through that and I was kind of confused on the difference between like, I guess the terminology, because there's like 3D animator, then CGI like designer, and then I saw layout and Previs artist and I was like, whoa, like what's the difference between all of this? So
yeah, there's definitely a lot of I was thinking about how to explain this one. So basically it's like, if you think about a manufacturing line or maybe a McDonald's kitchen, I don't know. Okay, maybe not. Let's stick with manufacturing line because I've actually never been in the kitchen of a McDonald's. But I guess the idea is kind of like, we call it like, there's like something called the production pipeline, and in that there's like a bunch of different roles, and people specialize in each separate roles to be able to make like one movie or one TV show. Maybe we'll use an example of a movie. So it's like in the beginning there's like storyboard artists, in the very beginning there's like the person who creates the story, and then there's the writers, and then after that then there's the storyboard artists, and they basically take the script, they start putting visuals to it, and there's also concept designers at the same time creating the look of it. The storyboard artists like start in a way like putting the whole visuals together. My fiance is laughing at me right now because he's much better at like explaining this. we work in the same thing, but it's like, and then like after that, once the storyboard artists like all have like the whole blueprint of the movie, what it like could look like, then there's like then after that there's like the animators, then the modelers, and they like do different things. Is this making sense? Like there's
I think
like,
so.
Different
so it's kind of like
arts.
You start off with like the first layer, and then you do like a bit more sketching over that, and then like a bit more over that until it really like comes together. Is that how it works, kind of?
Yeah, it's like everyone plays a part into making it before the whole thing comes together.
Okay.
Oh man.
That's definitely like really interesting, because I know that the way I visualized it like personally was more like the same person like not writes the story, but like I guess sketches the design, and then the same person puts it into the computer, and then the same person like animates it. So I guess it's kind of surprising to hear how many stages of that there are.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing. Actually, I found a great picture of it. This picture right here. This is much better at like explaining it than me actually talking about it. Yeah, so as you could see here in the picture.
Wow, so like, a lot of
so
steps.
With the idea. There's like storyboarding, which is like a whole team of people, and then after that, or during that, there's like design. So they're all working at the same time to create this thing. And after like they create like what I like to call kind of like the blueprint of what the movie is going to be. And after that, there's like all these other parts in the pipeline that come in, and each person that you see here is a separate department. And together like after it goes through each portion, then it creates like the full movie that you see at the end usually. So
I know you said that you personally do, I think it was CGI and like Previs. So where would that fit in this pipeline?
Yeah, so I actually do, in this section they call it layout, but layout and Previs are they're kind of similar to each other. Like, even I'm not 100% sure how to explain the differences of it. What I know for sure is Previs. Previs is something that a Previs artist basically like does similar to what storyboard artists do. Storyboard artists, they draw out what happens in a scene. They'll draw out the whole thing, and then we watch it, but it's all in 2D drawings. But like the Previs artists usually involve like 3D. It's done in 3D space, and we usually have cameras that have been set up to match and to pretty much be like the same as real life cameras. And then the way that Previs work, the special part about Previs is that you can start seeing the whole thing get put together.
So it's kind of like the first stage in the process where everything like comes together.
Yeah, where you can actually see, it's like where you can see like the whole, you could see everything moving more smoothly, and like you can start getting an idea of like the scenery, because when 2D, like the artists have to draw it all out, and like they're very talented, so they can get like most of it, but you know, sometimes things such as like the environment hasn't been worked out yet, so they don't draw things with the specific environment, and like they have like the general idea of where the environment is, like maybe characters in a forest, but like the forest itself though is like something that they don't know what it's going to look like.
So this is like kind of where like all the details start to get worked out better, and
it's like where the blueprint gets like finessed even more, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense. So also another question about that then is like, so you do kind of like the layout stage of it. Is that something that you study specifically, like layout, or is it more you study broad and then you can go into any of these steps just based on what you're interested in?
Oh, so yeah, I definitely study broad and then you go like specifically into it. That's like the general route that most people take, I feel.
So like generally, when you started in this field, you kind of came in with the mindset that I want to study like 3D animation, and then you decided like as you went on that you were interested in layout. Is that how that works?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like from the beginning, I was like, oh, I want to learn. It's like, oh, I really want to try like, I don't know. I'm like really interested in 3D animation. I love the movies. I love watching shows. I think I could do it too. Or I just love storytelling. So then you go into it going like, yeah, I'm just going to learn this. Most of the times you think you're going to be an animator, to be like hilariously. Like when I remember I was talking to my classmates, most of us thought we were going to be animators. It turns out we're like, no, we don't love animation, like the specific part more than we like this other part. So
then I guess like would the difference between animation and layout be like you kind of bring the setting and characters like to life, and then the animator is the one that's like making them move and like filling those transitions between place to place?
Kind of, yeah, actually. You're not too far off. The animators are the ones who actually bring in the acting. Like they are the actors. They are the performance in the actors, and they make they make the emotional performance, whereas like layout makes sure like they make sure that the camera language is there, and like the camera movements correctly, like it's interpreted from like the storyboards, because the storyboards come before, so they really have like a blueprint there. Then the Previs artist or layout artist, they come in, they put the cameras in like 3D space. They make sure it like tells the story similarly, and also like camera animation too, because cameras like, because the cameraman in real life doesn't stand still all the time. Like there's like shakes, or they like move. You know, like they move with like a cowboy when they're like on a horse or something.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I definitely did not know like how complex I guess the process was that goes into building these stuff, because I don't know, it's just interesting to hear that you use a camera and like I guess all these things about data points in something that you animate, because that's not something that I've really considered. I kind of had a picture in my mind of like, you know, it's just like one person works on, I guess, like layout and animation and modeling and all of that. And I didn't even realize like a camera comes into it, or that there's so many different groups of people working together. So that's interesting.
Productions are huge, definitely. That's why sometimes if you hang out at the end of like a movie credit, there's like the giant wall of credits.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just like there's a lot of people working on it, and at the end they're like, this movie has employed like 200,000 people or something like that. Yeah. I think it's like an encouragement for people to not pirate. But it's just kind of like, they're huge productions, and there's usually a lot of people involved.
And then kind of on that, what does collaboration in your job look like? How much are you working with other teams, like the animation team or the storyboard team?
Yeah, so collaboration's pretty much all the time. You have to collaborate the whole time, I guess, because
Mhm.
it's like even if you yourself are not collaborating, you are in a team of people. So usually your lead or supervisor is the one who's doing the collaboration above you and like, talking to the different departments. And then he
Yeah.
comes to you, or he or she comes to you, and you like listen to what you need to get done. But of course, like,
Okay.
you always like keep these other things in mind. So it's always like, I guess it's something natural that happens is, of course, if something changes in the story, like the
Yeah.
script changes, the storyboards for artists have to change what they draw,
And
or
then
the
everything
director
from there.
changes.
Yeah.
And then Previs has to be like, oh, or Previs layout has to change what they have.
Mhm.
And then sometimes if it's like an environment change, then the art department or the environment modelers have to change what they have. So it's a collaboration the whole time, and that's why it's called a pipeline. Woo.
And then also, what does collaboration within your own team look like? So are you usually, I guess, is it like you have kind of like a section that you work on individually, or is it more like a bunch of people are working on the same thing at the same time and like talking together?
I think it depends on like what I guess it depends on like what kind of show you're working on and like whether it's you're doing I guess because it's like I know that when I was working on VFX versus when I was working on an animated movie, and then versus when I'm working on this previs, on like strictly previs right now, they're a little bit different in terms of what your collaboration might look like. If you're working on a sequence, so like you are assigned like a whole sequence, then the collaboration there is mostly like you have to think about and ask, of course, like hopefully your lead or supervisor fills you in on this, but you also like go up, you like also look and can freely ask like the person who had the sequence before you, if there is one before you, and you go, you look at where they've left the characters and like what was going on, and then you go like, oh, okay, can I have your like, can I have the data that you had it in or something? And
okay, so that makes sense. So I guess it like keeps it running smoothly, so you don't see like the break from person who worked on this, like the person who worked on that.
Yeah, definitely. And you have to you like talk to them if you have questions, and of course you talk to your soup or lead, and you just go like, and if you have any ideas, you can bring it up with them too. Or if you like, most of the times it's like questions actually, where it's like, oh, it's like usually questions where it's like, oh, okay, then the storyboard this happens, but this is what I have. Like in the storyboard, the characters keep running backwards, but I have no more space to run backwards. There's a wall, kind of, and then there's empty space behind it. Like I can't make them go back, so you have to like figure it out from there.
Oh, that's really interesting. And then kind of similar to that, what does a typical day in your job look like?
Typical day. I guess it's mostly just waking up, getting on the computer. Like mostly just like whether if I'm really assigned something, I would just start working on it. But if I'm not assigned on something, I would let my lead know, and then I wait to see what I get. And then as soon as like I get briefed on what I need to do, then I just open up my program and I just start working on it.
Yeah. So is it something that you do mostly remotely? So obviously with COVID, that's like a little bit different. But if it weren't for COVID, is it something that's mainly remote, or is it usually something you go in person?
Most of the times you go in person, do these things. Most of the times, like the stuff that you're working on is like, I guess not I guess, but it's like it's sensitive, so they usually want people all in the same spot, and also it's because like they don't want any like data to leak out or like anything to leak out so other people see. But commercials, I would say, like are a little bit more lenient. Like you can, I know that you can work from home a lot more if you work on like commercial stuff. But before pre-COVID, yeah, everyone wanted you to go into the studio, or you could but like commercials a little less. Like commercials, you can stay home depending on who you are if they trust you.
Yeah, I didn't really think about commercials and animation. I guess like now that I'm thinking about it, obviously commercials have animation because it's not like all the things happening in commercials can like really happen. But that's just interesting. And also kind of on like the divide between commercial and Hollywood, is there a difference in the path you take to get to like either way, or do most people start out the same and just decide they're interested in one thing and go that way?
That's a good question. I think in the first place there's a very general direction that everyone works in. Well, if you want to work in CG, it's very general at first, because most of the times like you don't know what you want to go into. Like just like hearing from you, you didn't know that there was like all these other parts inside like making a movie. Well, I didn't either. So it's just like you just generally go for it first, then you start finding out like, oh, there's different things you can do. And then after that, like I don't know if it's true for everyone else, but I remember it was just like when I was going to school, it was like something new to us too, where we didn't know actually if you want to work in commercials and if you want to work in movies, there's kind of like separate ways you have to go into it. You generally it's like the same kind of showcase of skills. So what you do to like get, so I'm like jumping all over the place, but it's like
it's okay.
What you like generally do to like try to get work out of after college is that during college you work on like your skills, or not even college, like you don't have to go to college for this thing, I'll just put that out right now, but it's like during that year of like that university college period, before you start looking for work, it's like people usually like create a body of work to show what they can do.
So like a portfolio type of thing?
Yeah, a portfolio to like show what like kind of to showcase their skills. And what happens is in that showcase is what you're trying to sell to. So like from there it's kind of like you can create like a general one and see like if you can get employment to like what you want to try to get to. But sometimes if you're,
so it's like kind of like what your skills appeal to.
So it's kind of like if you keep making like, I guess it's kind of hard to say, but it's kind of like if your portfolio keeps looking like product work, I guess, and it's kind of like, oh, look at all these product work I'm doing, or like, oh, this feels like a commercial, then it can't help but be like, oh, look at like your portfolio looks like it's better sold to working into commercials and movies. And to work into movies, it's kind of like, that one's kind of interesting and kind of tough. I don't know how to answer that one because everyone has like a different way of getting into it, but it's mostly just like, it's always like, just you gotta work on that portfolio, that reel, make sure that, you know, I guess it looks like it's for movies, or like it looks like it's for what you want to work in. And then just kind of hope you land that first job.
And then kind of
it's always that first one.
Yeah. So, well, okay, I have a few questions. And the first one is like, how do you kind of land yourself that first job? Do you usually, is it something that you like send your portfolio to people, or is it something, I guess, like, what does that process look like of finding, because there's just so many different, like, do you specifically apply for a Previs thing, or do you specifically apply for animation, or is it more like you just go to a company like Netflix or like Nickelodeon, and then you're just like, oh, like, here's my portfolio? How does that work?
Ooh, so how does that work? Basically, I'd say that I would say the most general answer to that is that you just apply to wherever you can. You apply wherever you can, and you hope that someone is interested in you so you can start gaining work experience.
That process kind of reminds me of, like, I was looking at kind of like actors who like have a bunch of scripts, like they'll have like scripts that are like feet tall, and then it's just like they just keep reading through them and keep auditioning, and then they just hope they like land one job or land a few jobs out of like the many things they audition for. So it's kind of similar to that.
Yeah, kind of, actually. I would say, yeah, I feel like it's pretty similar. And then from there, it's kind of like, you just keep going. Yeah, and then once you land your first job, it gets a little bit like easier in the sense that like once you start working that first job, like, especially if it's in something that you wanted to, like if you're trying to work in your first job on a video game, then you'll start knowing what like actual skills and what.
So you get like that real world experience.
Yeah, you actually start knowing what they exactly want from you, or like what kind of skills are like desired, so that you can get more work. And also on top of that, it's a bonus because then once you really have that workplace on your resume and your
Mhm.
reel, it's
Yeah.
a little bit easier to start jumping into the next job, because I think it's like, yeah, because it's highly competitive. It's a really high competitive field to do this stuff, and it's
Yeah.
like there's lots of talented people, not just in like the US, across the world, and you're competing with the entire globe. And
Well, actually, kind of about, you know, people across the globe. Does your job, is it something where you collaborate with people from different countries as well, or is it mostly something where it's like people within the country?
I think it depends on where you work, for
Okay.
sure, and what size team it is.
Mhm.
It's possible, like you. So yeah, actually, I would say yes. There's always at some point you might be working with somebody across, like, in another country,
Okay.
or like just like in another state. But there's also times where it's just like all in one place, because it's just
Yeah.
like it's a small production, or it's a very
Mhm.
short production. So I would say, like, majority of the things, though, it's like most big productions, yeah, you're always working with somebody that's not in the same place as you.
So I was wondering kind of how much control do you have over what you're animating or what you're laying out? Is it something where like you have kind of room for creative design or like changing things up a bit, or is it really set in stone?
Yeah, that's, once again, depends on what you're working on. I would say majority of the times, like, I would like to say, like, majority of the times, and generally, like, and like, I guess something cool, maybe like a little tidbit for anyone who wants to get into like art jobs, is that you have to think of it like, most of the times when you're working an art job, you're not working art for yourself. You're not working on something that you want. You're always working on something that someone else is paying for, which
Mhm.
we'll call like the client, or working
Yeah.
on what the client wants. And so, like, in terms of how much creativity you have, it really depends on your role. It depends on, like, what you're doing in that role. But majority of the times, you're always trying to cater to what someone else wants. So yeah.
Okay, so you can like give suggestions, but ultimately it comes down to what they ask you to do.
Yes.
Okay. And then you also said that like you're working for a client and not yourself. So I was just wondering, like outside of your job, is animation something, or like laying out and Previs and all the stuff with CG, is that something that you also kind of do like on your own time for fun, just for yourself?
Well, back when I had more free time, I would on and off do it for fun. Like, if there was like a CG project that I was excited about, I would start setting it up. Or like, if I really wanted to try like adding something to my portfolio, or I don't know, if I just like felt like doing something. But the problem with CG, in my opinion, is that like you need a lot of like diligence to keep going. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you just like work all day on the same like
Yeah.
CG, you just kind of want to break.
That's interesting. And I was also wondering, what is the favorite part of your job for you?
Ooh, I think seeing the final
Mhm.
the final creation, like, and
Yeah.
even in commercials too, because I've worked in like all sorts, actually. I've worked in like commercials, I worked in like VFX movies, animated movie. Now that was fun, but like,
Yeah.
and also now I'm like on my first TV show, so it's kind of fun.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah, they're all actually slightly different from each other, but yeah, like in every single one of them, it's like, oh, uh seeing the final creation is always the most
Yeah.
awesome and fun thing, and it always feels really good because you're like, I worked on that. Cool.
Can you tell us what the TV show is about?
Oh, let's see. I believe I'm allowed to share the name, because
Okay.
there's articles on it now. So if there's
Oh,
an
so it's not
article,
released yet?
no, it's not released. But I remember I did look at the article too. Yeah, because usually it's like if an article's been published out, you can start talking about it a little bit more.
Okay.
But so far that like all that has been released about it is the name, which is called The Blue Eye Samurai. It's on Netflix,
Okay.
and it'll come out in 2022, I think. That's
Wow,
what I
okay.
believe.
I'll keep an eye out for it. Also, I saw that you started
least-
working
yeah.
for
Okay.
Netflix recently. So I was wondering kind of how does that compare to what you've done in the past?
Yeah, so I've actually worked in a lot of smaller studios and like a lot like more smaller production teams, and Netflix is definitely a very big one.
Yeah.
Also, on top of that, another difference is that I used to work at MPC, and Real Effects when I was in Canada for a year, and those are to me are also considered big productions. With the difference between those two and Netflix is that the ones I worked in Canada, they were part of like the actual production of creating the movie. So meaning that all of the details. Wait, no, okay. Let me start from the other way. Netflix right now, they're creating the content of it, so they're kind of like creating the whole blueprint of what the show is going to be like, and they are like basically their own client. So it's like it's very different.
So there's more like kind of creative freedom also in that way.
Kind of. Yeah, there's a little bit more, and there's definitely more like immediate feedback, and like whatever you're doing is immediately almost in like the realm of like because like the scriptwriter, the director, and like the showrunners are all in the same space.
Yeah.
They can communicate with each other much faster, and that like what we're doing is actually like definitely trying to like finesse the details and like put out like what we need, or sorry, like trying to make sure that like the story makes sense, it's readable, but like what we're all also ultimately doing is like, besides creating the show, of course, is actually creating a production package, I guess, like creating a package to send to some other studio to actually create the show.
Okay, that's again pretty interesting, because I thought it would be kind of like one company who has like a bunch of different groups doing everything. I didn't know that it's kind of like you send it from this place to a totally different company to work on it. And you also said that you worked on a few TV shows and like a movie. So I was wondering, what's one of the most interesting projects that you've worked on?
They're all interesting. I don't know. It's really hard to choose. They're all interesting because, to be honest, I've only worked on one of each so far. Because I've actually been doing a bunch of different things before that. I like was working in AR at first, augmented reality, and then that was really fun. I was like, oh, this is really cool, because I really wanted to like try new tech out, because I was like, new tech's the future. So I worked in that, but then I was like, oh, I really want to work in movies. I like did set out to work in movies, so I really want to try it. So worked really hard. Then got my first like movie job, and then it was a VFX one. And then after that, like I got a chance to work in animation, and so they're kind of different from each other in terms of like what things you have to think about. There's still like the same things, but like in terms, yeah, it's hard. It's so bad at explaining this.
So there's like, so it's really broad, the field. Like you can go into a lot of different things by entering this field.
Yes, you can actually. Yeah, you can go in many different things, and like, yeah, you can go in many different things. The pay scale is kind of different for each one of them, though. Like it really depends. I personally think, but like, but if anything, I guess like if there's something that most of them share in common is that I guess the work is not consistent. It can be consistent, but it also cannot be consistent. Or how's it? It's like they're more temporary. Like you know how like the traditional job is like you get a staff job and then you just work in that staff job all the time. Most of this, I think it's fair to say most of this industry is not like that. You will not. Most of the times you will not have like a stable job like that.
So it's pretty like unpredictable also.
Yes. Okay. If you want a staff job, the higher chances of getting a staff job usually is if you work in commercials.
On like the other side of things, what is your least favorite part of your job?
I think it would be the part where it's that's a good one. I think it's the fact that you have to bounce place to place actually. But this is more of like a personal preference. I know I have lots of friends who love going like they love traveling. They love going like from A to B to B, C. They're like,
oh, when you say bounce from place to place, does that include traveling, like not just changing your job?
Yes.
Oh, because you said a lot of it is in person, like with the team.
Yeah, lots of it's in person. The way it is right now, it's like a lot of work is not really in the United States anymore. A lot of actually, it used to be, but now a lot of it is I'd like to say outsourced, but it's actually just offshore. Or I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I'm using those terms correctly. We'll just say a lot of the work is in other countries.
Okay.
And so you it depends like it depends on what you want to do. It depends on what kind of work you want to do, I guess. It's a lot of like personal choices too, but
that's cool how flexible it is, because there's a lot of like different things you can do with this job, ways you can take it.
Yeah, definitely. I would say like the easier ones is like the ability to go from place to place, but I think that takes a strain on your personal life.
And also, what made you first interested in this job?
Oh yeah, I think it was the fact that like I never personally thought I was good at academics. At least I felt like I wasn't that good. I had lots of really like smart friends, and they were like, "Oh, I got all these cool GPAs," or like look at my ACT score, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not that smart, I feel." So then, but then like I really like drawing, and I thought to myself like, "Oh, I could totally get into this." Or like, and actually, especially just watching lots of TV shows and movies. I remember thinking about it, like I could do this, but I was actually very aware of the fact that like, you don't like I can't say it's the same for now, but I guess like generally like I thought that if you go into art, you just won't really make that much money, because like
yeah, I think that's definitely a pretty like common notion that people have.
Yeah, it's like you just won't make that much money. It's like that's something that kind of like I was thinking about. I was like, well, that wouldn't really be nice either, though. But it's just like, I guess like I remember I was watching like Avatar: The Last Airbender during that time, and I loved that show. And I remember at the time I was just like, you know what? Oh, why not? I'm gonna go do it.
If someone was interested, would you recommend that they start preparing like right now, kind of, I guess, with art and
Oh yeah, I'd say if they're interested, start early. It's much better. And especially start early in drawing, because I didn't know you had to have good foundational drawing skills. So actually, I didn't make it to the school I wanted to at first.
Like, I know you mentioned earlier, you don't have to go to college for this job. So is that kind of like, so I guess, is it something that people can also try to teach themselves by practice?
Pretty much, yes, actually. Like, I think so. It really depends on like how much diligence you have, and how much like you are willing to keep going on. And of course, like, you don't have to go to college in the sense that like a lot of this stuff is available online now. You can pay for a lesson on the internet. There's a lot of them, and I think like the age, you can be like any age. I don't remember if you have to be like 18 or up. I feel like you could be like 16 and you can still take them, but it's pretty cool, yeah.
And then also, I think right about now, we were wondering if Matthew could come on. He was going to ask a few questions.
Yep. I'm going to ask a few questions. Okay. So how long typically does it take for you to finish like year end on like a project?
What kind of project? Is it a personal project, or is it like a project?
Like work related.
Work related. Well, I guess for commercials, it can go anywhere from like a couple of weeks, a few days even, but like it's like a couple of weeks to like a few months. It depends on how long the commercial studio or the commercial place has had the project for, and how long they've been working on it for. Sometimes I just come in at the middle, or I come in at the beginning. They don't need me after that, and then because like I only do one part of it, and then the rest. But I've also worked on a full project before, and where I'm like there from the beginning to the end, and it's like it could go anywhere from a few weeks to a couple of months. But if it's a movie or a TV show, they can go anywhere from a few months to a year or two, depending on how long.
I wanted to ask like which cities in the US typically have like a huge market for like animators?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. LA. LA is the most classic, biggest hotspot for it. It's also the most competitive. The second one I think would be, actually I don't know. I know LA is like number one, then like 2, 3, and 4. I don't know, but then I know it's like Texas has people. I don't remember if it was Dallas or Austin, but Texas, New York, and maybe Atlanta. That's like the top.
So so like which job as like an animation artist would you have like the most creative control over?
Ooh.
I think we were like talking about this like before, like how you like typically deliver what the client wants, but you don't have that much creative control.
Yeah, that's yeah. It's a tough one because it's like you're always. I guess it's like the most obvious answer to that question is if you're producing something yourself, if you're making something yourself, you have the greatest control, but you also have to foot your own bill. But like yeah, you have to foot your own bill for your own creation. But if you're creating something for something else that someone's paying, who has the biggest? Yeah, I personally haven't been in these positions at all, but I would like to think like anyone with like the title director at the end, probably. But then at that point, though, you're not actually. What I heard is that you're creating, but you're not actually in charge of creating the minute stuff anymore. You're there to
So more
direct.
like a manager type of thing.
Yeah, like you have the vision, you're holding the vision, and
Someone else like carries it out, I guess.
Yeah, someone else executes the vision out, but you're the one who's like saying, like, oh, I want this to be a pumpkin, a big orange pumpkin, and then someone else goes like, okay, I make big orange pumpkin for you, and you go make it rounder, and then and you go like, oh, I'm like thinking of like these things, or like you just draw it out straight up for them to show them what you're thinking. I wonder what other people's answers are. Who has the most creative control? The person with the money. No, just kidding. Which is also funny because it's kind of true because that's the client. So, yeah.
And then I think I just had one more question for today, and that is, what is your tagline, like your motto, something that you try to live by? It's a hard question.
My motto changes like week to week. No,
Yeah.
just kidding. My motto this week is, I want to sleep. Let me get my work done and sleep. My motto next week, I'm going to spend life on food. I guess general one is try to live life without regrets. Nice general one.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
Yeah, and probably don't, or was it enjoy life? It's short.
Yeah.
It's a little morbid, but it's
kind of similar though, like enjoying life without regrets, and
yeah, just enjoy it. You know, if there's like decision that you regret making, don't linger on it too long. Just move on. Try to look at the positive things in life. That one's really hard to do though, but yeah.
It's hard, but I think it's great advice because you can really only do what you can do now. So
yeah, definitely. Or you know, and like even if there's like a regret, like a choice that you regret, you just go like, you know, why did I make that choice? And then you go like, oh, you know, it can't be helped.
yeah.
And then you regret it less. You're like, you know what, I did do that. But yeah, yeah, that would be my motto for now.
Thank you so much for listening this week. Tune in for our future episodes every other Thursday and leave us a review down below. Check out our Instagram at By Youth for Youth Podcast for career resources and more about this episode. Bye!